I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with a check of your first word news. President Trump plans to overhaul the tax program in North Dakota. You're looking live now as he was joined by the state's Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp, who traveled with Trump on Air Force One. The president is hoping for bipartisan support on his tax overhaul. We'll have much more on this story later in Bloomberg Technology. Trump overruled congressional Republicans and his Treasury Secretary today to cut a deal with Democrats that will fund the government and raise the federal borrowing limit for 3 months. Mr. Trump brushed aside calls from GOP lawmakers looking for a longer extension. 15 states and D.C. have filed a lawsuit challenging the president's plan to end DACA. It was announced by Washington State AG Bob Ferguson. The program protecting young immigrants from deportation will end in 6 months. That will give Congress a window to find a solution. Officials are preparing to shut down 2 Florida nuclear plants that may lie in the path of Hurricane Irma. The storm could make landfall late Sunday. Meantime, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is taking precautions by drawing down water levels ahead of the storm. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg.
And this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, the president arrives in North Dakota, the latest stop on his tax reform roadshow. Can Trump sell Main Street and Silicon Valley on his plan to rewrite the U.S. tax code? And will Democrats get aboard? We'll discuss. Plus, the divide deepens between the president and tech as a growing number of CEOs speak out on DACA. More than 400 business leaders signed a letter on behalf of 800,000 immigrants whose American dreams are now on hold. You'll hear from one of them, Dan Rosenzweig, CEO of the online education platform Chegg. And Facebook's Russian revelation. The social media giant says it found political ad spend linked to fake accounts from Russia in the run-up to the U.S. presidential election. First, to our lead. President Trump's tax roadshow is in full swing. He has just wrapped up a speech in North Dakota, reaching across the aisle to praise Democratic lawmakers and making promises his tax plan will ease burdens for individuals and businesses. Meantime, more criticism of the president's decision to end a program preventing the deportation of immigrants illegally brought to the U.S. as children. CEOs from Apple to Google to Microsoft and Uber have spoken out. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg held a Q&A with 3 so-called dreamers on Facebook Live. Speaking to reporters on Air Force One today, President Trump insists that Congress is backing him up on his decision. Take a listen.
No mixed signal at all. Congress, I really believe, wants to take care of the situation. Really believe it. Even very conservative members of Congress, I've seen it firsthand. If they don't, we're going to see what we're going to do. But I will tell you, I really believe Congress wants to take care of it. We discussed that also today. And Chuck and Nancy would like to see something happen, and so do I.
Here to wrap up all the news out of the administration, we are joined by our Bloomberg Tech executive editor, Tom Giles. And in New York, we have Marty Schenker, our Bloomberg senior executive editor for global economics and government. Marty, I know you've been listening in to the speech that President Trump just wrapped. What is your reaction to what he's had to say? Let's start with taxes.
Well, you know, it's the singular ability of Donald Trump to make what might constitute a nightclub act into a policy speech. It was a typical Trump campaign type rally. He touched on the broad themes of tax reform that he said many times. He broke no new ground. And while some of the broad themes have a lot of popular support, he was very short on specifics. In fact, there is no tax plan publicly available now, and that's going to be a problem if they don't get one out soon.
Trump tweeted earlier today, "We are the highest taxed nation in the world. That will change." Tom, Silicon Valley obviously disagreeing with Trump on many issues. Is tax one of them?
Well, they would like to see some form of tax reform that will let them bring back some of these tens of billions of dollars that they have parked overseas at a lower tax rate. They like the idea of being able to bring this back and use it in different ways. I mean, it could influence, they could use it for compensation. They could use it for deal making. Some people talk about them using it on R&D. Will it create jobs? Will it give jobs to those people who voted Trump into office? Or will it line the pockets of, wealthy shareholders? That remains to be seen, but the tech industry very much does want to see some changes on taxes.
It's interesting, Marty, given that you see the tech industry disagreeing with the president on so many issues, DACA not the least of them, but then they also, do want things that the president can lead the way on. Yeah,
that's, when the Business Council disbanded over the Charlottesville issue, a lot of people thought that businesses were going to stop working with this president, but that is not true. There is an agenda that business and Trump have in common, and one of them is tax reform. But the political equation is something that will determine whether we get it or not. Time is running out. They've got a lot to do in Congress. Today's deal does take some of that off their plate, but major tax reform in the short period of time is going to be a heavy, heavy lift.
Right. Dave Camp, the former head of the Congress Tax Writing House Ways and Means Committee, said he doesn't think the rewrite will happen this year. Take a listen to what he had to say.
I think they can make significant progress this fall. I wouldn't be surprised if the actual signing of the bill or enacting into law doesn't occur until sometime in early 2018. But if they make enough progress this fall, I think they have the ability to move it early next year.
Marty, I want to make a transition from tax to what is happening with DACA. I mean, you have plenty of leaders out there refusing to stay silent on this issue. What will it add up to when it comes to Congress and actually, taking action or writing legislation that Trump ultimately supports?
Well, one of the things that needs to be done is Donald Trump needs to make it clear what kind of immigration reform bill he will sign. He indicated today in his comments about Pelosi and Schumer that he might sign a clean DACA reinstatement. But that will not please Republicans. And without Republican support, it's going to be very difficult to get a bill to his desk that does what a lot of people and the majority of Americans want it to do. But there is a small chance that they could actually be able to reach a compromise. It remains to be seen whether the Republicans themselves can support something that they can send to their president.
Another tweet from the president earlier saying Congress now has 6 months to legalize DACA, something the Obama administration was unable to do. If they can't, I will revisit this issue. Tom, we saw Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg speaking with Dreamers on Facebook Live today, obviously putting themselves out front on this issue. At the same time, not a lot of clarification on what Facebook actually intends to do. Right.
Will they protect, what will they do to protect people should they come after them? It does sound like the Trump administration has made it sound like, well, look, we're not going to go after all 800,000 of these people. People who commit crimes are probably going to be in our crosshairs. But different companies have said different things. Microsoft is a very interesting case in point, particularly given we were just talking about taxes. Microsoft has said to the administration, has said to Congress, we urge you to deal with DACA first and then taxes. To us, it's a bigger deal. You've got a bunch of companies today coming out and signing on to this legislation on behalf of 15 states' attorneys general who are opposing the changes to the DACA ruling as well. Them saying, look, this is going to be bad for business. It's targeting Mexicans in particular. It's going to be hard for us to recruit, and it's ultimately going to hurt our business. And you saw 3 companies based in Washington state where one of the attorneys general is in fact spearheading this, Microsoft, Starbucks, and Amazon.
Well, speaking of how it impacts business, what do you make of the fact that we're seeing these companies take very left-leaning positions on these issues? What does that mean for conservative employees that work at these companies?
Well, it's interesting you had asked that. We talked to several employees who would consider themselves either Trump supporters or conservatives, more traditional conservatives. And they feel like it can be a very lonely place. It's not a place where you can very actively state what you believe and be out, as it were. when it comes to having conservative viewpoints. You worry about, how you're going to be treated in meetings, how you're going to be treated when it comes to time for promotion. So it's not a popular place. Silicon Valley is not a popular place to hold more what we would consider right of center viewpoints.
So, Marty, what's going to happen over the next few days when it comes to Congress as they start to work? They've obviously got a lot of work ahead of them the next few months.
Yeah, well, two of the major things, the debt limit and the spending bill, have been taken care of along with Harvey aid. Irma is bearing down on Florida. See what happens to that over the next few days. If it keeps on track, it could be a disaster of historical proportions, and Congress will be rushing in to provide funding for that. After that, look for some advances on tax reform, but there are many other things like funding flood insurance, reauthorizing the FAA, some other really major things that Congress has to do, plus the backlog of appointments, including the new one at the Fed that happened today with Fisher resigning. So they have a lot on their plate and not much time to do it.
All right. A lot of homework. Bloomberg's Marty Schenker and Tom Giles, thank you both. Coming up, the people who took to the streets outside of Trump Tower yesterday aren't the only ones protesting the end of DACA. How some business leaders are fighting back. Next. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Amazon is planning to build its first fulfillment center in New York. It'll be located at Staten Island and create more than 2,200 full-time jobs. The new center is part of an ongoing push by the e-commerce giant to house inventory closer to customers and enable fast deliveries. Amazon says employees will have the opportunity to work with advanced robotics. Well, before the Trump administration announced the end of DACA, a coalition of entrepreneurs and business leaders across the country sent a letter to the president urging him to keep the program in place, saying, unless we act now to preserve the DACA program, all 780,000 hardworking young people will lose their ability to work legally in this country. Every one of them will be at immediate risk of deportation. Our economy would lose $460.3 billion from national GDP and $24.6 billion in Social Security and Medicare tax contributions. One of the companies that signed that letter is Chegg, the online education platform that provides students in high school and college with homework help, textbook rentals, and more. Joining me now from New York, CEO of Chegg, Dan Rosenzweig, who also served as the former COO of Yahoo. Dan, great to have you back here on the show. So I'm sure you've been talking to students. If you're a student right now who is affected by this, what are you thinking?
Well, they're nervous. There are about 65,000 students under the DACA program that graduate high school every year. And so there's a couple of 100,000 that are in the high school system. About 10,000 graduate college every year. And it's a very difficult situation because they were brought here through no fault of their own. This is an American issue, this is a moral issue, this is a practical issue, and this is an economic issue, which is how are we going to deport 600,000 to 800,000 people who have been living here and producing and productive. There are neighbors that are in schools, and then it will eliminate people that are working and paying taxes when we have 4.5% unemployment. So the whole thing makes very little sense right now on any level that you look at it.
What are some direct steps that you might take? We've heard a lot of leaders speak out from this. Mark Zuckerberg, for example, he interviewed 3 dreamers today. However, it's not clear what kind of action in particular the company might take. What kinds of things will you do? Are you lobbying? Will you be having dinner with your congresspeople? What will you be doing?
Yeah, look, I think we just have to keep this in the public eye as much as we can because, the President of the United States, the head of the Republican Party in Congress, the head of the Democratic Party in Congress have all said they want to fix this. So it's incumbent upon people who agree with them to get it fixed. They have 6 months to get it fixed, and we ought to be able to keep the attention and the focus and the highlight and humanize this as much as we can because these are people that are living in this country doing the same things that we as Americans are doing. They're contributing to our economy, they're contributing to our society, and the more we humanize them like Mark did today, I think the more people get a better understanding of what we're talking about. We're talking about people who came here through no fault of their own and are positive contributors. And in the education system, this is going to hurt universities because this is going to eliminate funding that goes to the universities because these are students that pay. They're not eligible for college loans, for example. So this is a situation that has a really economic problem to it if we do not fix it.
Right. 113 DACA students actually applied to medical school, 65 enrolled last year. Also, just another interesting stat there. I'm curious, Dan, if U.S. Marshals came to the doors of Chegg and for somebody that works at your company whose status was affected, would you let them in?
Well, yeah, I mean, we would let them in. Of course we would. Right now, the program may end. We're hoping that it doesn't, but right now they're allowed to be here. And so, of course, we would do that. And we want everybody that wants to be in this country, that wants to contribute to the society, that wants to live with American values, that wants to produce and pay taxes and raise their family here and help us compete with the rest of the world. We want them here. And according to the heads of Congress, they want them here too. So we're going to continue to urge that they say that they do what they say they're going to do, which is fix this problem. They have 6 months to do it, and we hope that they get it done very quickly.
So my question is slightly different. If U.S. Marshals came to get an employee who works at your company who is now at the risk of deportation, would you let them in the door?
You know, that's a question that we'll have to deal with if that situation happens. Even the president said that he does not intend to make that a priority. So we don't imagine that's going to happen. We hope that doesn't happen. And if that situation arises, we'll deal with it when it happens. But for now, the most important thing is we continue to urge our elected officials who are elected to do the will of the people to fix a problem that 85% of the people agree they want fixed. So we're just going to keep pushing it and promoting it along with the other companies and other people that agree with it.
Dan, we were speaking about this in the earlier segment. It's interesting to see so many tech CEOs taking very left-leaning positions on issues. I wonder what this means for the employees who work in these companies and your company who might have more conservative views. And I wonder if those people are feeling a little left out right now and what the implications are for business leaders increasingly speaking out about their politics.
Well, look, we speak out about things that affect our employees and affect the students that we serve. We're not a political company, we're not a political organization, but we do have values and we do have American values, and this is one of them. We're a company that's made up significantly of people that have immigrated here, that are minorities, that are contributing incredibly well. We have employees all over the world, but we have nearly 400 employees in the United States of America. And just a few years ago, we only had 50. So we're a high-growth company who are creating jobs. And so I don't think this is a left or a right-leaning issue. As I said, the president said he wants it fixed. Paul Ryan said he wants it fixed. Chuck Schumer said he wants it fixed. It seems like an American issue on this particular one. There are issues that are left or right-leaning, and we try to stay focused on what students feel that are most important to them and what our employees believe makes us the place they want to come and work. We have plenty of people at our company that support people all along the political spectrum. They're welcome to, they're entitled to. What we focus on is serving the student first. And these are 65,000 students a year graduating high school. That means that there's 240,000 students in high school right now. Our job's to serve them. 10,000 graduate college. Our job's to serve them. So we try not to make these political issues as much as these are American and practical issues that we think will affect society and the economy.
Last quick question, Dan. It's back to school time. This is what you do. What are the new trends this year that stand out to you?
Well, in higher education, which is what we're focused on, it's very clear that the shift to digital is on. Ever since Chegg has become an all-digital company, which happened at the beginning of this year, it's reflected in our growth, it's reflected in our profits, it's reflected in our stock price, which is up nearly 100% from the beginning of the year, that students are using online learning tools increasingly. And the more content we add, the more capabilities we add in terms of helping them get into college, pick the right majors, graduate, get a better grade, and now focusing on getting a job and getting the job skills that they need. Employers are working with us, governors are working with us. They see Chegg as the platform that actually supports the students' needs. And so the trend is we just keep seeing that growth and more digital and more students learning on their own.
All right, Dan Rosenzweig, CEO of Chegg. Always great to have you on the show, Dan. Thanks so much for stopping by. Coming up, Pokemon Go was a global phenomenon last year, and the company has big plans to keep its fervent fans. Our exclusive interview with the CEO of Pokemon next. This is Bloomberg. U.S. lawmakers passed a bill to speed up the introduction of self-driving cars. The House bill will put the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in charge of regulating self-driving car safety and preempt competing rules at the state level. This means manufacturers would eventually be able to introduce as many as 100,000 self-driving cars a year, ones that don't have to comply with current safety rules that govern cars driven by a human. The bill now moves to the Senate, where a bipartisan trio of senators are already working on their own competing piece of legislation. Well, after more than a year since its launch, Pokemon Go still attracts more than 65 million people around the world. In the U.S. alone, the game has been among the 20 most lucrative apps this year. Speaking to Bloomberg Television, Pokemon CEO Sunikazu Ishihara hints at big plans for the game.
ローンチした時は開発ディレクターだった野村
When we launched Pokemon Go last year, it was only 10% of what Niantic and us wanted to achieve. We are still working on creating the ability to swap Pokemons or have the users battle their peers. We've only covered 140 Pokemon so far. With more than 800 figures, there's still much more we can come up with.
Ishihara-san, I just wanted to ask you, the Switch has been out now for half a year. What are your impressions of how it's doing, and what were your impressions before it went out? Has anything changed?
I told Nintendo that Switch wouldn't be a success before it went on sale, because I thought that in the age of the smartphone, no one would carry around a game console. It's obvious I was wrong. I came to realize the key to a successful game is quite simple. Software with absolute quality leads sales of hardware. Playing style can be flexible if the software is attractive enough. Currently, it's popular among the early adopters, and there needs to be one more step to attract a wider audience. I see more potential in Switch, but one shouldn't overestimate its potential.
You know, you mentioned strong software is the key to a system. I just wanted to ask you about your upcoming game for the Switch, your Pokemon game for the Switch. It caused a lot of excitement when it was announced in June. What else can you tell me about it?
The Pokemon games work well on handheld devices, and we are developing games that work on Switch. I can't give you details on what we are working on at this stage, but for now, we would like everyone to focus on Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, due in November, and Pokken Deluxe on Switch, due on September 22nd. We are currently focused on providing different playing styles to our customers.
Pokemon CEO Sunikazu Ishihara there. Coming up, we speak to Turo CEO Andre Haddad. His thoughts on DACA and the company's whopping $92 million funding round next. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Mark Crumpton in New York. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with first word news. The National Weather Service reports that as Hurricane Irma takes aim at Florida, two other storms, Katia and Jose, are forming. Katia is expected to drift towards the coast of Mexico by Thursday. Jose is quickly strengthening in the Atlantic, but officials say so far it poses no threat to land. President Trump and congressional leaders have agreed to enact a $7.4 billion emergency aid package for Hurricane Harvey, together with an extension of the U.S. debt limit and funds to keep the government running through December 15th. New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who was at the meeting, applauded the deal.
This is a really positive step forward. It'll work to quickly provide aid to those hurt by Harvey. It'll avoid default, and it'll fund the government avoiding a shutdown. And we all agreed we'd work together in December as well to avoid a default.
The president's unlikely to nominate his top economic advisor, Gary Cohn, to become the next Fed chairman. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. Cohn's chances are said to have dropped after he criticized the president for his remarks about the deadly march in Charlottesville, Virginia. British Prime Minister Theresa May's office distributed a letter to major British companies for senior executives to sign, praising her Brexit strategy. According to a draft seen by Bloomberg, the letter states the repeal bill would prepare Britain properly for life outside the EU. May is fighting to win support as divorce talks with Brussels remain deadlocked. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. here in New York, 7:30 Thursday morning in Sydney. My colleague Paul Allen has a look at the markets. Paul?
Good morning, Mark. We look set up for another reasonably positive day across the Asia Pacific today, following US markets higher and that deal, temporary at least, on the debt ceiling in the States. The oil price is higher as well, while gold posted its first losses for 5 days. Base metals a little weaker too. Here in Australia, we'll be watching the Aussie dollar again, still hovering around that 80 cents US mark, pretty much unaffected by the weaker than expected GDP numbers on Wednesday. Watching out for the trade balance today, estimated to come in at $1 billion, while retail sales for July growth there expected to weaken a little to 0.2%. Elsewhere, waiting on China foreign reserves for August and Japan's leading index for July. I'm Paul Allen in Sydney. More from Bloomberg Technology next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. We return now to our top story of the hour, the repeal of DACA. The news was met with swift disapproval from the tech community. The rebuke from tech comes as no surprise, as 60% of the most highly valued tech companies in the U.S. have first or second generation immigrant founders. And 13 of those top tech companies are collectively worth over $3 trillion and employ more than 1.5 million people last year. Joining us now to discuss, Turo CEO Andre Haddad, who recently published a post titled Immigrant as Innovator, detailing the U.S. immigration dilemma and his journey after fleeing his native Lebanon due to civil war. You fled Lebanon when you were 17 years old. I know this is a very personal issue for you. What is your reaction to what the White House has done?
To be honest with you, I'm very disappointed. I've always had this belief that what makes the U.S. a very special place is that it's a place where people who are immigrants and refugees who are seeking a better future can find their home. And I think that that's been the moral of the U.S. for generations, and it's also been part of the economic success of the U.S. I think our ability to attract talented people who are fleeing and are deciding themselves to seek a better future somewhere else. It's exactly the sort of people that share that DNA with the entrepreneur who is seeking a better future, who sees opportunities somewhere and builds a company, pursues that better future. And I think that's part of the economic success story of the U.S. So
the president is saying that's all great, but U.S. workers, U.S. jobs need to come first, and that immigrants are taking jobs from American workers. What do you have to say to that as someone who employs many immigrant workers?
I think that's a fallacy. I mean, when you look at the data that you mentioned earlier in your opening remarks, a lot of these immigrants that have been brought to the U.S. have created a lot of value. So I'm sure that it's not, a zero-sum game. I think there's a lot of value that's created by these immigrants. They're building companies. They're employing a lot of U.S. workers. The economy is not just about one job is taken by another job. It's what's the total value creation that talent brings to the country.
Speaking of the value that you have created, you just raised $92 million. Turo is a car-sharing company. I want to start by having you tell us a little bit how it works and how it differs from other rental car companies out there, like, say, Getaround or Zipcar, and the ride-sharing business, whether that's Uber or Lyft.
Yes, thank you for giving me that opportunity. I think Turo is very much an Airbnb for cars. So we're an open marketplace. We don't actually control our fleet. We enable people to list their cars and share them on the platform. And we have more than 800 makes and models today, everything from Mercedes-Benz to a Tesla to a smart car, and everything in the middle. So it's very diverse. There's lots of offers. We have just celebrated our 4 millionth user and 170,000 cars that are listed on the platform. And we're very much focused on enabling people to take long-duration trips with these cars. And so we're offering rentals by the day minimum, and most our travelers, our customers, are booking cars by the week or weekends or several days. The average is 4 days. And on the other hand, we enable our hosts who are sharing their cars to really turn the car from a kind of cost center that depreciates over time into a revenue generating asset. And so that's one of the things that make us really unique compared to a traditional car rental business like Zipcar.
So if you live in an area that is well served by Uber and Lyft, you know, why rent a car instead? Ride sharing versus car sharing?
Ride sharing and car sharing actually coexist really well. In fact, we see that our most loyal customers at Turo are people who have downsized on their ownership and maybe using more frequently than average ride-sharing services like Lyft or Uber. What happens is, you know, Lyft and Uber can be very practical for your weekly commute needs or for simple transportation needs from A to B. But if you want to get out of town for the weekend, if you want to go on a trip for several days, if you want to go to a place that's you know, maybe special, where you want to have a nice driving experience, then you can actually rent your neighbor's car. So we're particularly practical for people who live in, you know, city centers and who may not own a vehicle anymore, and we become the preferred way for them to get out of town for the weekend.
Uber and Airbnb are still dealing with a lot of regulatory issues. What kind of regulatory issues are you dealing with?
Our biggest regulatory challenges are around insurance. You know, insurance is part of the Turo model. We provide coverage through our partner Liberty Mutual, who also joined our fundraise for our Series D. We're delighted about that. We provide the insurance that covers both the host and the guest. And of course, insurance is a highly regulated industry. And you know, this notion of renting out your car and making money with your car is something that predates a lot of the car insurance laws. So we're trying to help, you know, the insurance ecosystem move forward and embrace this notion that the car is an asset that can be rented out and earn money for its owner.
So when you look at the future of car transportation, let's say 10 years from now, how much of it is ride sharing, how much of it is car sharing, how much of it is traditional car ownership, how much of it is self-driving cars? Because your business is, you know, could change dramatically just over the course of a decade, right? Given
Yes.
all of the technological shifts happening right now.
Absolutely. We think that a big part of the future of the evolution of cars and transportation is going to be a bit of a mix of all the above. You know, 10 years from now, when, you know, level 5 autonomy will be more close to reality than what it is today, we think that autonomous vehicles are going to be amazing to share, because it's so easy to be able to, you know, summon your car and have it go meet your guests and pick them up from their hotel and to have them drive your car for a day or for, you know, a weekend. And that just makes sharing of your car a lot easier. And we think that that future of autonomous cars is going to make sharing, you know, as convenient as just hailing a car today.
Daimler led your most recent investment round. Do you see them wanting to bring technology like this in-house? Is that the ultimate goal? Would they want to buy a company like yours?
I think they're really interested in how we're fundamentally transforming the economics of car ownership. You know, the business of car manufacturing and selling, especially when you're selling premium cars like Mercedes-Benz has been doing for decades, there's always this gap of, you know, the cost of ownership being too high. A lot of people would maybe aspire to buy a Mercedes-Benz, but really can't afford, you know, the lease or afford the payments, the financing. But when you can actually turn that car into a revenue generating asset that can pay for itself, then a lot more people could afford a Mercedes-Benz. And I think that, you know, that's really at the core of the relationship that we have with them.
All right, interesting. All right, Turo CEO Andre Haddad, thanks so much for joining us today on the show. Well, it is a partial victory for Intel in its 8-year battle with the European Union over a $1.26 billion regulatory fine. The EU's top court ruled that a lower court has to re-examine Intel's appeal in the antitrust case. Intel is among the few companies to have continued a lengthy battle against a European Commission fine all the way to the top EU court. The matter could have ramifications for disputes involving U.S. tech companies such as Google and Apple. Coming up, was Russian money being funneled to produce political ads on Facebook? We look at what the social media giant has discovered next. This is Bloomberg. A stock we are watching, Trivago shares have plunged nearly 20% in today's session after the company lowered its expected revenue growth to 40%, down from the 50% figure it previously forecast. The German-based online hotel booking site said it was unable to get its spending in line with reduced revenue. And now to a developing story. Facebook says it's been investigating possible connections between ads purchased on its site and Russia. The social media giant says it discovered about $100,000 in ad spend connected to about 470 accounts likely run out of Russia. This would suggest that Russian money was used in violation of U.S. laws that prohibit advertisements to be bought from overseas to influence American elections. Most of the ads were bought between June of 2017 and May of this year. Facebook says it's deleted the accounts and pages and is providing details to U.S. election investigators. Joining me now to discuss, our Bloomberg tech reporter, Sarah Fryer, who wrote the story and covers Facebook. So what happened?
So Facebook has been looking into what it calls information campaigns, which are, they sort of have this malicious fake element to them where there are a lot of fake accounts, a lot of fake pages, and they try to spread propaganda in one way or the other. They had a report come out earlier this year that detailed that and linked it sort of vaguely to Russia. This now comes out and says money is involved. And while $100,000 might not sound like a lot of money, right, it can buy a lot in Facebook advertising. This is more than 3,000 ads that were purchased that were targeted in some cases to certain geographic regions, which we know is very important ahead of an election. While most of the ads didn't name a candidate or talk specifically about voting, they did talk about very divisive issues in the U.S. like LGBT rights and gun rights and race relations and immigration. So they were trying to spark, or whoever was behind this effort, whether it was the government or some other Russian actor, was trying to spark some divisiveness in America ahead of the election.
Now, I know that they're sharing information with U.S. regulators, but is there any idea just who in Russia was behind the ads? I mean, is there any clarity on whether they have ties to the actual Russian government?
Facebook is not saying whether they have ties to the government. Of course, we are looking into it. Everyone is looking into it. There are several intelligence committee ongoing investigations into this. So I think that Facebook is cooperating. They're trying to provide information where they can. But the main thing they're trying to do is prevent this from happening in the future. They're looking at the patterns, matching it to their machine learning algorithms, and trying to stop this from being a problem in future elections around the world.
Another interesting story worked on about Facebook today. Analysts report out that Facebook is saying it can reach people who don't exist. In fact, by 10 million, they're inflating these numbers of people that they say exist that this analyst says don't exist. Explain what's happening here.
Okay, so on one hand, we're talking about the estimated reach of a Facebook ad. On the other hand, we're talking about the numbers that are in the U.S. Census. So Facebook says it can reach more people than are in the U.S. Census. Of course, that implies that, in Facebook, which is a place where we have real names, we have identities, Facebook sells its advertising based on that. There might be some fake names, fake identities, or duplicate accounts, or whatever it might be. What Facebook says in response is that they don't mean to totally match the census. In fact, in a lot of geographic regions, there are often visitors or people who are in a place that are not actual residents of that place, and that the advertisers only pay for the people that they reach.
So this analyst report, is coming from Brian Weiser of Pivotal. And I'm curious, I mean, he's saying there's like a $10 million person difference. I mean, do these other kinds of people that Facebook is talking about, can there really be 10 million of them?
10 million tourists in America. Yeah, I think that what this comes back to is this debate we've had for more than a year now about how much we can really trust metrics on digital properties. And Facebook had a little bit of a controversy last year when it said that it inflated some metrics it was giving advertisers. They fixed those problems. They weren't related to billing, but it did cause a ripple effect in the advertising industry where people were thinking, we don't really know if all of the people that Facebook says we are reaching are actually people, or if they're fake accounts, or if they are actually looking at these ads, or if it's click fraud. In that case, it would be like a bot clicking on the ad, which is not actually a human. So they've been trying to fix their system. They've been trying to work with third-party verifiers to make sure that these numbers are legit. Meanwhile, this report from Weezer at Pivotal Research gives more fodder to this argument from advertisers that they need more transparency from Facebook.
All right, 2 great stories from you today. Sarah Fryer, who covers Facebook for Bloomberg Tech. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, Apple is getting set to unveil more than just its last lineup of iPhones. What to expect at the Steve Jobs Theater next week. And a quick programming note, Bloomberg TV and radio will have full coverage of the European Central Bank decision and the following press conference with ECB President Mario Draghi starting at 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time. This is Bloomberg. Google Street View cameras have been revamped. The tech giant has upgraded the cameras used for its mapping service for the first time in 8 years. This according to Wired magazine. The new cameras will help capture photos that are clearer, higher in resolution, and more vivid in color. And like their predecessors, the cameras will still sit on top of Google-branded cars. Well, at Apple's highly anticipated product event next week, the company will unveil not only its latest lineup of phones, but its brand new campus. The keynote will take place at the Steve Jobs Theater, one of the buildings at Apple Park, which is seen as the founder's final legacy. The site is said to have come with a $5 billion budget and was designed by famed architecture firm Foster & Partners. Here with me now to discuss, Alex Webb, who covers Apple for Bloomberg Tech and got a lot of these details about the highly secretive theater. What do we know?
I was speaking to some people. I was speaking to some people who've really got knowledge of what's inside that theatre. It's the one place which nobody's had a chance to look at yet. We've seen pieces in Wired and the Wall Street Journal magazine where they've looked at the broader HQ, but inside the theatre itself, there are little tricks hidden up their sleeve. Firstly, there's an elevator, which when you come in through one door, it'll descend a level but twist at the same time, so you exit through the same door but facing in a different direction. Then as you go down into the theatre itself, on these on the outside of the circle that you can see there in the image, there'll be an obscured wall to your left, and then you go into the theatre itself, enjoy the product unveiling. When you come back out, the walls will have retracted and you'll see the demo room in front of you.
It's called the Steve Jobs Theater, and Steve Jobs, one of the last things he did before he died was, work with the city of Cupertino to get all of these things approved. I mean, how involved was Steve in the actual campus itself, the theater itself?
I mean, in the very early stages, he was very, very active. He spoke to the city of Cupertino, made presentations. In the years since his passing, it's really been Johnny Ive's baby. We've seen Johnny take a step, the chief design officer. He's really taken a step back from the more active elements of iPhone and iPad and Mac design, although he still does have some sign-off, authority on that. He's been a lot more hands-on with the campus itself, and I think the lift is very much evidence of that. Rather than going for the simple design you might see in any normal elevator where there's one door on one side and one door on the other, that would be the simple answer. Well, the Apple answer is no, let's make it complex but elegant.
Okay, so this company has long been dealing with the "what would Steve do" comments, and this certainly reminds everyone of Steve Jobs. What does that say?
I think there's a strange dichotomy here, because on the one hand, this is very much Steve Jobs' final legacy to the company, but it's also almost a clean break from the Apple of Steve Jobs. His shadow perhaps looms everywhere in a metaphorical sense in the old campus. His office is still intact there as far as we know, and this new one is Steve never worked there. He might have had a big hand in creating it, but it's Tim Cook's Apple that is moving there and not Steve Jobs. And I do wonder whether that will have an impact on freeing people up to come up with more innovative things and not worry about what Steve would do.
It's certainly interesting, especially as Tim Cook is being more and more vocal about political issues and moral issues. Do you think that is going to be Tim Cook's legacy?
It seems for now that is the stamp he really wants to put on Apple, that Apple is responsible and a responsible global player in terms of issues beyond corporate wealth, profit, the classic questions that investors might be keen to answer. He also is very aware that Apple's strength in product comes from Steve, and so he does not want to be tinkering with that and trying to change the sense of the company. So he's juggling two different balls here.
Right, and in speaking, the times that I've spoken with Tim, he's always so respectful and reflective on Steve and his legacy. Any surprises that we're expecting on Tuesday next week?
We're still plugging away. There might be some things to come out. You never know. There might be some things.
More things?
Well, I think that I should knock on wood. I'm not going to make any predictions on that basis, but there's always something they could do in the software, some details that we don't quite know about, maybe some innovations. If you look at some of the acquisitions they've done in recent years, some of those things haven't yet surfaced, so there's a chance that could come up. I think we've got a pretty good sense of what's coming in terms of 3 iPhones, a new Apple Watch, and a new TV, and I hope at least those are really going to be the headlines come Tuesday.
It's probably more than enough, we should say.
We'll be tearing our hair out if we find we've missed something. Yes.
Okay. Alex Webb, who covers Apple for us, thanks so much for stopping by. That does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Tune in to Thursday's show for our exclusive conversation with Dell Technologies CEO Michael Dell. And a reminder, we are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.